Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to ask you right at the top of the show, please subscribe. That's how you help us get our content to more people. It helps the algorithm, the infamous algorithms. Please subscribe and tell your friends about the show. We really try to spread awareness. We fight human trafficking. All things related to children are important to us. For 28 years combating human trafficking. You can support our ministry. You can volunteer. You can definitely sign up for the newsletter, join some of our campaigns. Maybe host a watch party of the feature film Sex Nation. Go to sexnationfilm.com. I'll ask Rebecca to put that down in the lower third for you here. sexnationfilm.com. Watch the movie. You can also host a watch party. But today I want to talk to you about something radical. As you saw in the headline, American teenagers love cocaine as much as their parents do. And let's pause there for a second. I'm talking about the white powder, the sniffy stuff, cocaine. No, it's not a drug just from the 60s and the 70s, but now there's a massive resurgence of cocaine use in American teenagers. So much so that I had a meeting last Wednesday morning with a family whose child is at the brink of overdosing and have overdosed on cocaine. And it has become common knowledge that in some of the most affluent neighborhoods in America, but also middle class America, that cocaine is now the drug of choice, to the point where there are actual cocaine challenges on TikTok we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about another challenge on TikTok called the chroming challenge. But cocaine, let's focus on cocaine for a second. A particular concern about cocaine at this moment, other than it being cocaine, deadly, is the fact that fentanyl is now laced into cocaine. And now we have kids buying cocaine, of course, on the black market, cutting it up. For the most part, what we can find at the moment is that kids are not shooting cocaine up, they're sniffing it. But unfortunately, many of the deaths from cocaine, the overdoses, were found with traces of carfentanil in the cocaine. Now, we're going to talk about fentanyl today, who's producing it, where's it coming from. But this really is a heavy show on my heart because I feel like the enemy is attacking kids, and for some reason, parents are almost always late to the knowledge or the party, as you would say. Well, here we hope to help you be early. So let's take a journey through some of these things. Rebecca, if you'll bring up some of our images. We're going to go to our first image here in a minute. And I want to really take a deep dive in here and really inform you as a parent at the end of the show to ask you to have a conversation with your child. And it's going to be a call to action of something you can physically do, because I tell you, this is one of those things where when it's too late, it's too late. Look, as horrible as abuse is and human trafficking is, when a child overdosed and they die from ingesting something that shouldn't be in their body, you don't get to just bring them back. There's no rehab for that. There's no rescue and restoration. These things could be final. So let's look into this. UCLA Health reports this. And thanks, Dan, for putting it on the screen. Adolescent drug overdose deaths. Pause there. We're not even just talking about, the study is not just on drug use, which we can talk about what happened in COVID, that there was a 73% rise in teenagers using drugs since COVID. And we're going to look at another study where the number has held steady post-COVID. It's not declining. Of course not. It's a drug. They get hooked on the drug through COVID because the powers that be that really knew nothing, that completely isolated people, not what we're meant to do as human beings, drove kids to cell phones, trafficking, self-exploitation, and drugs. So UCLA Health, adolescent drug overdose deaths rose exponentially for the first time in history during the COVID pandemic. Pause. During COVID, we talked about isolation. We talked about kids not being able to interact. We're hiding people behind masks. But nobody was talking about the spike in drug use, particularly cocaine. And particularly now laced with an open border fentanyl influx. deaths. And so the study was on deaths. If you could go to the next graphic, please. News release. This is December 15, 2022, 6 months ago or so. Most reported substance use among adolescents held steady in 2022, what I just told you. So COVID 2020, 2021, those numbers are not declining. 73% rise year on year of kids using illicit drugs, with over 43% of American teenagers now saying that they have tried an illicit drug. 26% of them saying they use an illicit drug. I think almost 70% saying that they've tried weed. We're going to talk today about weed, particularly in this era with an open border. Because yes, you may have thought I was going to say this, but let me say it anyway. Weed is now laced with fentanyl and other things that's like a resurgence from the 60s. It's like Groundhog Day or Whiplash Day. Some of you who are a little older, your Gen X's or your baby boomers, this is back, but it's back with vengeance. Let's go to the next one, Becca, please. The BBC sounded a warning, and this is in October 2022. And of course, through their Los Angeles affiliate in the U.S., but the BBC sounded a warning to the U.S. that said fentanyl overdose U.S. teens are the fastest growing group to die. We're not doing studies here on who's using. We're doing studies on how many are dying. And nobody's talking about it. No mainstream media is talking about it, saying, whoa, halt the bus. Karine Jean-Pierre, do you maybe want to talk to the president as the press secretary of the White House and say, we might want to warn the American families that children are dying from drug overdose induced by fentanyl. Maybe we want to discuss that when we discuss the open border. But maybe it doesn't make political sense to them to highlight that an open border has an influx of fentanyl that comes from who? China, the Communist Chinese Party. I'm not talking about Chinese human beings. I'm talking about the Communist Chinese Party, the same Communist Chinese Party, which nobody wants to talk about, that bought 141,000 acres in Texas. Question being, why would Governor Abbott and his land commissioner sell 141,000 acres to an affiliate of the CCP in Texas, knowing that China is the number one producer of fentanyl in the world? 99.997% of all fentanyl in the U.S. comes from China through Mexico, through the U.S. southern border. That's not being discussed. Now we're finding that the BBC has to write an article to the U.S. population saying, hey, just so that you know, your teenagers are the number one group in culture today dying from drug overdose. The American teenager, with well over 90% of those drugs flooding into our country from Mexico, Honduras, Cuba, Venezuela, Dominican Republic. We're going to dive into all of that, and a disproportionate size of that now being white powder, cocaine. Fentanyl comes in a white powder, blends very easily into cocaine. Not only into cocaine, we're now seeing the Communist Chinese Party in Mexico in laboratories printing, literally stamping oxycodone, fake, counterfeit, oxy, that is fentanyl, hydrocodone, Ritalin, prescription medication now flooding into the U.S. market, where your children are buying it from friends. So they may be taking a Xanax that is counterfeit, laced with fentanyl, not knowing what the body weight is of the individual, the age, no description on the label in the package, take every 8 hours, etc., etc. It's just laced with fentanyl. We've got, 6 members of West Point dying from fentanyl overdose. What people didn't talk about is only 3 of them ingested fentanyl. The other 3 died because they were giving their friends mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. That's the danger in this stuff. I didn't bring a packet, but a normal stevia or any, sugar packet is the equivalent of enough fentanyl to kill 1,200 people. We have ceased across the Mexico border with our intelligence agencies and sheriffs predominantly. We walked into, Dan, if you remember, in Hudspeth County, we walked into a, I don't know if you went in there, into the vault, the drug vault, and the boxes of cocaine in the drug vault, the boxes of fentanyl. Enough fentanyl seized in America thus far to kill over 300 million Americans. That's how much fentanyl has flooded across our border. But the administration wants us to believe that the border is secure. No threat here. The cocaine cartels, now also from the Dominican Republic, are flooding cocaine into the market. The Chinese are lacing it with the cartel, with fentanyl. And American kids are dying to the point where the BBC is warning us. Just like Vladimir Putin, a number of months ago, had to warn the American public by warning his own people. In his national address of Russia, he said, let's not be America, where they rape their own children, where they sell them for sex, where they commodify their own children, where they sexually exploit them, where they have drag queens dancing for children. This is Vladimir Putin, not a good guy, a war criminal, schooling America on morality, schooling America on how to keep children safe. And then he goes further and he says, we are Orthodox, we're Christian, but America has lost her ways. And I'm talking about Vladimir Putin schooling the land of the free and the home of the brave, the land that says one nation under God, as printed on our money. We have things like the Texas Constitution, where, I don't know if you knew this, but we have 150 House members in Texas because there's 150 Psalms in the Bible. That's why we have 100, because we are from biblical reference. We have 31 in the Senate because there's 31 Proverbs in the Bible. Our Constitution was drafted from the Word of God, but we need Putin to school us on how not to abuse, use, abandon children. Now the BBC is schooling us, saying, hey, maybe a red flag, your kids are dying. Number 1 in the world. Not a list we want to be on. Can you go to the next one, please? This is The Guardian. Opioid crisis, killed by a pill, bought on social media. The counterfeit drugs poisoning U.S. teens. And this was last month. Accidental deaths soar among young people amid a proliferation of fentanyl-filled pharmaceuticals sold on platforms such as Snapchat and Instagram. Do you know who your child is talking to on Instagram? Because I want to talk to you about the fact that over 60% of children have already engaged with a predator, a sexual predator, in their DMs. They don't know, but the predator's in there, talking to them, testing them, profiling them, seeing if your child is a soft target. Well, so do the drug cartels. Now children are buying counterfeit prescription drugs online laced with fentanyl, and they're dying. I mean, nothing to see here, right? Border is secure. We got a good grip on protecting the innocent and the vulnerable, meaning children. And I'd argue this nation has abandoned the innocent and the vulnerable. See, it's not just drag shows for kids. The most egregious is American-born children sex trafficked in this country. 1 in 3 American women going through sexual abuse. 1 in 5 American men. Asking them what gender they are. Sexualizing them in the classroom. Selling them online like commodities. Selling them counterfeit drugs that literally is killing them through Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Do you know who your child is talking to? Do you know what they're buying? Rebecca, please go to the next one, if you don't mind. If we can jump to this, yes. This is a message from TikTok. Okay? TikTok has a new hashtag called Coke Talk. C-O-K-E-T-O-K. Coke Talk. Cocaine. Coke Talk hashtag. It's so popular that TikTok issues this message if you can call it that, because it's not really technically a warning or a deterrent. It just says, be informed and aware some substances can be dangerous when used or misused. Learn more about how drugs, alcohol, tobacco can affect your mind, body, and behavior. That's fantastic. When you go to learn more, it just tells you more about drugs could be dangerous. That's great. Why not TikTok have your manpower that look at the algorithm, that look at the posts, that frequently censor free speech? Same with Twitter, same with Instagram, particularly Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. You frequently censor speech. Why not rid your platform of Coke Talk? And by the way, Coke Talk, which I don't encourage you to look at, literally goes as far as on TikTok showing how to cut cocaine, the right method to snort cocaine. These are tutorials to your teenagers. And TikTok saying, well, we put up a disclaimer that maybe drugs are dangerous and here's some complications. Not, hey, you could die because China is lacing the stuff you're snorting with fentanyl. Oh, that's right. China owns TikTok. Never mind that there's no Coke Talk hashtag in the Chinese version of TikTok. You can't buy a child on TikTok in China. You can't have child porn on TikTok in China, but you can in America. Oh, for sure. We'll just throw up a little disclaimer that said, well, we warned them. Well, it's a child being coerced, now addicted, dying potentially from ingesting the stuff that you make and you flood across our border. So now who's complicit? I argue the U.S. government, because they're looking the other way. Have you heard this message from Karine Jean-Pierre, from the White House press secretary? Have you heard this question asked of the President of the United States? Maybe the Vice President? Maybe Secretary Mayorkas? Can we go down the list? Maybe the Speaker of the Senate, the head of the Senate? Speaker of the House, who's a Republican? McCarthy? Kevin? What are you doing? Why are you not talking about this? Where's the committee hearings on this? The war on drugs. You're losing that war. Clearly. Because we lost the war for the battle of having a border. And anything, this team, the Jaco Booyens Ministries team, we've stood in Hudspeth County, Texas, where you can drive a dirty bomb into the U.S. and no one would know. You could smuggle cars, people. Heck, you could literally walk Egyptian camels into the U.S. and nobody would know but the cartel. But the border's secure. Unfortunately, evil exists when good men do nothing. And unfortunately, evil, being Satan, goes after innocence, goes after children, because he wants to destroy legacy, because there's a war between Satan and the seed of Eve, God's children. Can you give me a couple more, Becca, please? This is a map of the transit zone between the U.S. and Mexico for drugs flooding into our country. This drugs predominantly comes from South America. This is not new. Dan, it was this way in the 60s, in the 70s, and the 80s. It's just back then you couldn't just, walk across the Rio Grande. And actually, this may shock you, put the fentanyl in the backpack of a child. Put the cocaine in the backpack of a child, because CBP, they're not allowed to look. They're not allowed to frisk. So now the cartels are literally using the children as the mule, recycling children back and forth across the border. So not just trafficking them for sex, but they're now the mules, because you don't have to go through a tunnel or smuggle it in through shipping containers from Asia like you used to. Now you just walk it in. Heck, put it in the backpack of a child. Walk it in. Exploit children further is what the Chinese are saying. And Americans are saying, well, it's not that bad. We're just creating the greatest homeless class in America's history, the greatest class of drug users. Actually, right now, Gen Z is called the number one stoner generation in America. Baby boomers, they have surpassed you. what you were able to accomplish through Woodstock and Burning Man and all of that. And it's happening right in front of our faces. Can we go to some more, please, Becca? This is the National Drug Intelligence Center just declaring that the Texas southern border is the number 2. San Antonio market areas is the number 1 area. It's the number 1 place. Sure, California has a border. Sure does New Mexico and Arizona. But it is Texas, baby, because it's 1,254 miles of U.S.-Mexico border. Go to the next one, please. International drug flow into the United States from China, particularly fentanyl. If you look at this map, and you look at the little map on the right, the greatest influx is coming in. And then you see a little number 7. You see some drugs flowing from America back into Mexico. Okay? Here's what happens. Right now in Brownsville, Texas, when Title 42 was lifted, Chinese flooded into the U.S. These are not necessarily Chinese individuals that lived in mainland China. They've been living in Mexico, Honduras, Cuba. They've been working in some of these pharmaceutical factories, but more predominantly, they've been working in cannabis farms. When Oklahoma opened up their cannabis regulation, there was an influx, a flood of Chinese companies growing marijuana, THC, in Oklahoma, smuggling the THC out of America into Mexico. Now you're seeing an influx, a flood, absolute flood of Chinese nationals into Brownsville, Texas, into Texas, standing up, what do you think? Marijuana farms. And they are doing what? Taking the marijuana, smuggling it out of the U.S., lacing it with fentanyl. Lacing marijuana with fentanyl. Also, if you can find me that graphic of lacing marijuana with an animal tranquilizer, which is going to be the flashback for you baby boomers to, what was it, Dan? You said the 70s? 70s, 80s? 76. That's when I was born. So here's the rise again. Fentanyl mixed with xylazine is an emerging threat in the U.S. An animal tranquilizer called xylazine is increasingly being found in the U.S. illicit drug supply and linked to overdose deaths. So you're finding a death child who snorted cocaine laced with fentanyl, but the fentanyl was infused with an animal tranquilizer, which Dan educated me, was used in 76, and they called it gold, the cocaine? No, the cannabis. The cannabis was laced with this animal tranquilizer, and now that's happening again in cannabis, in fentanyl, in cocaine. Xylazine can be life-threatening and is especially dangerous when combined with opioids like fentanyl. Who's talking about that? It's so bad that we know people personally whose dog had to go to the vet. The vet needed surgery. The vet couldn't put the dog under anesthetics, you know. The anesthesiologist couldn't put the dog under because there was no tranquilizers available. And when asked, well, is it a supply issue? The answer very blatantly was, well, no. I mean, it's just, flooding the market of illicit drugs. And so now, heck, even the pets are suffering, can't get surgery, can't get worked on because the vets are saying, listen, it's so popular today, which I want that to lead me into the following. Can you pull up for me the challenge of chroming? CHROMING. Let's do a real search here. We're going to go to the screen. Chroming challenge. Go to Fox News. Fox covered this just 2 days ago. This would be literally a TikTok challenge. Hello, TikTok. Also on Instagram and YouTube, but predominantly on TikTok, as Rebecca is trying to pull up. If that one doesn't load, get us another one, please. I almost don't want to give you too much details on this because I don't want people to try it. But it is practically ingesting toxic fumes. And this is not new. This is as old as time. You know, in Africa, people will sniff glue, gasoline, etc., etc. But the chroming challenge is now claiming lives in the U.S. Most recently, a 13-year-old teenager from Middle America who lost her life because she was engaging in a chroming challenge on TikTok and died. If we look on screen, what is chroming? The deadly social media trend on TikTok. So wait a second. Cocaine on TikTok to the point where there's tutorials, Coke Talk, hashtag. Chroming on TikTok. Yet TikTok's not doing anything but putting up a little disclaimer. On chroming, there's not even a disclaimer. There's massive groups that do this together, that end up in the ER, that end up dead. This maybe doesn't flood across the border because this is anything from hairspray to gasoline to glue to just any aerosol, any toxic fume ingested to the point where the person loses their life. But it's a craze through teenagers. I again ask you, who is your child talking to online? What are they engaged with? Surely you can spot this. Can you not? Can you not see it when a child is intoxicated? Are you engaged enough as a parent? Do you stop them in the morning and look in their eyes? Are they clear of thought? Are their eyes clear? Do they show up on time? Do they fall asleep in the classroom, teachers? This is no longer just sexual exploitation. It's now just an onslaught of anything and everything. Can you go, Rebecca, please, to the graphic on what to do if you think someone is overdosing? I want to give you a couple steps here because you may not know. One back. There you go. Call 911. Well, we know that. You may wait 15 minutes. Hello, defund the police. We waited on a 911 call the other night for quite a while. Ended up, maybe we'll do a show on this. I ended up in a high-speed chase, chasing a wanted felon, predator, pedophile in a stolen vehicle. I was literally chasing this guy with my truck with a teenager in the passenger seat of his vehicle, with 911 on the phone, to eventually find 911, probably 7 minutes later, to try and get them to track me, to me losing this guy in traffic. It became life-threateningly dangerous how they were driving. So call 911, please, but also call the closest local authority. If you're in a shopping center, security. If you're close to a hospital or an ER, anybody that you think potentially has had training in CPR, also call 911, but don't just do that. Move to the closest point of help authority. Administer naloxone if available. If you think someone is overdosing, look into that. Try to keep, and this is particularly also with fentanyl, try to keep the person awake and breathing. Lay the person on their side to prevent choking. Stay with the person until emergency assistance arrives. I want to ask you this, please, and I don't beg, but I'm going to ask you fervently. Stop filming things and do something. But we don't need your footage on Instagram of what happened. You can tell the story later on how you helped save a life. How you were the one who took action. How when another human being is being hurt or harmed, whether it's self-harm or hurt by someone else, that you're the one who actually steps in and covers them and protects them. For me, the book I read, the Bible, the King of Kings, the great Messiah, Jesus Christ, our Savior, he himself humbled himself to cover the naked prostitute, to walk to the leper when the disciples said, you can't go. You can't even, not only am I going, give me your tunic. Give me something to put on his body. Yes, I'm going. I'm going to stick my hand in his side. I'm going to touch the leprosy. So if the Savior of the universe, if my Savior could humble himself to cover somebody and not write about it, tweet about it, take a quick selfie or a video, then I'm going to ask you to do something. Step into the life of a child that's desperately crying out for help through their behavior, the way that they are in their own unique way saying, help me, please. And it may even be flipping you off or cussing you out. That is, in fact, them saying, help me, help me, help me. And it's our job to show the goodness of God, the mercy and the grace, the healing power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The fact that He will cover you when you step in and help another. And yes, you may put yourself in the line of danger. And yes, you may be unpopular. And yes, you later would tell, you know what, it would have been cool for my Instagram. I do not care. I care about life. We are letting life expire in this country without flinching. And it's the lives of children. And you can actually do something about it. You don't need to be the expert. Just do something. Be there. Call somebody. Step in. Cover. Help. Protect. Defend. Say something when you see something. Rebecca, we got a couple more. Do you mind going through some of the others, please? When we get there, Dan, if you'll show that. I want to charge you to understand the gravity, the significance of the moment in our country when we have to have conversation about children, teenagers, 12, 13-year-olds dying from cocaine overdose. Our youth is in a free fall. Our youth is in a desperate cry saying, help me. Our youth is being approached by the certifiably insane that tells them you can pick your gender and you can flip-flop it and you can be a furry and you can drink out of a bowl because you think you're a dog. And our youth is so desperate for identity, which is really Christ identity, because you're born with this hole in your soul that you try to fill, and only God can fill it, because trust me, if money could, then Hollywood would be happy and not broken. And divorce rate wouldn't be who knows what now. It's probably 70%. And dysfunction, and teenagers wouldn't die from fentanyl use. If you could fix it with the ways of the world, then it would have worked. It doesn't work. A teenager, a child that is going through trial is screaming at you, help me, give me boundaries, save me from myself. But unfortunately, there are the adults that's pushing them in that direction, telling them life has no value, telling them that you can't question, telling them that there is no truth, that you make your own truth. Well, how do you represent yourself today? How do you affirm your behavior? What do you think the Word of God means? What do you think truth is? What do you think sex and sexuality is? It's all nonsense. There's absolute truth. Without it, a society crumbles. And it's crumbling. You're watching footage, and the White House, the office of the President of the United States of America, tells you it's a peaceful protest, and your eyes are seeing a building on fire. But MSM, mainstream media, is telling you it's not what you're seeing. It's peaceful. Well, it's a child's right to go to a drag show and have a perverted adult dance in their face, exploiting them. No, that's not right. Well, the border's closed. You just don't know. Believe us because we tell you it's closed. But we don't want you to know about the fentanyl deaths. 300 fentanyl deaths per day in America. Not just on the border, by the way. In every state, in every city, across this country. Now lacing cocaine. Cocaine epidemic ripping through the American youth. Do you know what your child is using? Do you know what your child's friend is about to introduce to your child? You know, one of our most recent cases that we're dealing with, an 18-year-old boy called a neighbor over and said, let me show you something. Showed him some graphic, violent orgy sex in porn. And now we're dealing with a 12-year-old boy that's addicted to porn, that's a sex addict. And if not handled correctly, will become an abuser. Completely dependent on demonic forces. But it's okay. Nothing to see here. We're just doing life in America. We're just kind of going through the motions. Things like an open border doesn't really matter. Oh, some kid died from fentanyl overdose. Oh, the government sold 141,000 acres to China. Oh, we're the number one sex trafficking nation on earth. And no, I'm not talking about migrant children, American children. Oh, Gen Z is the number one generation producing porn on themselves. They're that empty that they are selling themselves. No pimp needed. The pimp is Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. Heck, now it's even Pinterest. Any place where they can communicate with a buyer of sex. But there's nothing to see in America. No. Vladimir Putin is schooling us. The BBC is schooling us. And I don't consider them the most moral. Let's look at a couple more, Rebecca, please. Stay on that one for me. Drug use went up 61% among 8th graders between 2016 and 2020. That's pre-COVID. That number now, we don't have a more recent study on 8th graders, but 61% increase. 8th graders? How old is an 8th grader? 13 years old. Going on 14. Went up 61%. 62% of teenagers in 12th grade have abused alcohol. Actually, the article, if you read the article, it says that 62% of them self-admitted and recognized and confessed that they binge drink. That's the definition of being an alcoholic. Go on a bender. 62%. And by the way, do you know the fastest growing form of introduction to cocaine is while drinking alcohol? You actually know the level of cocaine user, they say today, by whether they are what's called a wet or a dry user. Someone who only uses cocaine after they've had a couple of drinks, or someone that doesn't even need to drink alcohol, they just go straight to cocaine. And the method of choice now with teenagers is straight to cocaine because they've been binge drinking and snorting cocaine at the same time, and now it's just straight cocaine. And it's a matter of time before that little packet at that party has fentanyl in it, and they don't come back from that. Is that a risk we're willing to take as America? Are you sure what your children are doing when they go to parties? Are you sure what they're buying online? Because do you know that we are seeing fentanyl, cocaine, heck, anything shipped through UPS, FedEx, the U.S. Postal Service, unmarked. You could order it through the mail. Not your days anymore, Dan, when you guys were, and you needed to know the right guy in the right part of town, the wrong part of town, and put your life at risk and go into a stash house. No, now it's knock on the door. Ding dong. It's dropping off your fentanyl, sir, to your child. Most recently, a friend of mine, actually last week, 2 weeks ago now, her son, who's a really good guy, he's like a little gentle giant, went to go pick up his prom date. She's from another school in South Lake, Texas. Very nice neighborhood. And he picks her up. There's no parents at home for her prom. Alone. And she gets in his car and she does a line of cocaine in front of him. He had no idea that this girl did cocaine. And he told his mom that she did several lines of cocaine that night. And when he questioned her, she said, "Oh, half my school does cocaine. We do cocaine at school." Wait a minute. Pause. You want to tell me that teachers are that incompetent that you cannot tell whether a child is intoxicated or not, or could it possibly be that we have submitted the teachers into this silent majority where they won't even speak if they see something wrong because of the public ridicule if they dare to set boundaries and parameters for a child? But the Word of God tells you to discipline a child if you love the child. Maybe the latter. Maybe a combination of both. But the net result, they're dying. And the world is warning us. You go to another one. Illinois teenagers are 4.29% more likely to have used drugs in the last month than the average American teen. Something is happening in Chicago, and it's not just race crime, deaths, it's drugs. As a matter of fact, if you take that, can you go to the illicit states of illicit drug use? Here we go. Illicit drug use in the last month. And this is literally last month. 12 to 17-year-olds, guys. We're not talking about 25-year-old college frat girls that go on benders. We're talking about 12-year-olds. This is pre-puberty. Look at that list. Think about 5.8 million K through 12 students in America, in Texas, sorry. There's most of any state. Second is California. 5.8 million K through 12 students. Let's split that in half, saying middle school, high school, and elementary and kindergarten. So let's say 2.5 million students in middle school and high school. So of the 2.5 million students, 7% of them in Texas, that's over 150,000 use illicit drugs last month. We're on the border. So out of the 150,000, you would think one of them is going to get something laced with something. But they are, because they're dying. So here's my call to action. Here's what I want to do. Now, what do we do with this information, Jaco? Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you have the chutzpah, as we say in Hebrew, the Jews would say, or the kahonas, to do this in your home as a father and a mother, I want you to drug test your children, 13 and up. Randomly. Jaco, you out of your mind? No, I'm in my mind, because your child matters to me. And as a matter of fact, mom and dad, you take the drug test also with them. Let's rid our houses of the demonic spirit of pharmacia, or pharmakia, as they would say. Let's get that demon out of your house. Now, what do you do if you find that there is traces of fentanyl in your child's bloodstream, cocaine, other drugs, marijuana? Then you deal with the facts and you get help, and you can reach out to us. We can point you in the right direction. But at least you're going to save your child's life, because you actually love them. You actually care. So I'm asking you, all moms, dads, don't resist your wives on this, because you're doing a little on the side. Take the drug test and get your home clean. Here's 2 drug tests. The first one, the best one, is called Identify. You can buy this on Amazon. Heck, if you could buy the cocaine, you might as well be able to buy the test that can tell you that your kid is snorting cocaine. No, I'm not saying your kid's doing it, but do you know? And are they not worth enough for you to make sure? And if you randomly test them, just maybe in the back of their head, they'd go, my mom is kind of out there, man. I may just walk in an hour before soccer practice next week and do a pee test or a hair test, and I can't risk it. And in the process, you help them make it through puberty and the hellacious journey through public school at this moment of not having to be a druggie or potentially engage with fentanyl or an animal tranquilizer, for that matter, or inhaling, toxic fumes. So this test takes 5 minutes. It's self-administering. 5 minutes to get the result. It tests marijuana, cocaine, morphine, amphetamines, benzodiazepines, oxycodone, ecstasy, etc., etc., etc. That test is about $39. There's a cheaper one that I want to highlight for you as well. So Identify is the best. Easy at Home 5, because it tests the main 5 things: marijuana, cocaine, opiates, amphetamines, and benzodiazepines. That one is about $12.99. $12.99. It's worth it. I'm asking you in this coming week to test your children. And you sit them down and you say, because I'm your parent, not your friend, and I care about you, and there's dangers out there, and we have an open border, and there's sex trafficking, and the cartel is lacing everything with fentanyl and horse tranquilizer and who knows what else. And Satan himself is at war with Eve, and here it is in Genesis. Read it to them. I must protect you, and so we're going to do a drug test in this house. Not because I don't trust you, but I don't trust them. Who's them? They who make the drugs. And then you deal with the cards as they fall on the table. Let the chips fall where they may, and we deal with it. And we get you help. And you identify a problem before it is a disaster in your home. Your children are worth it. And then while you're at it, would you please talk to your child about whether they've ever posted a nude selfie? Whether they've ever sent that to a friend? Because do you know that over 60% of female high school students have now sent a compromising image of themselves, and 67%, the Internet Watch Foundation found that 67% of self-produced compromising images, naked selfies, pornography, etc., find its way onto third-party websites turned into porn. Bet you your child didn't know when she sent a picture of herself to her boyfriend that she was only going to end up on a porn flick on a third-party website that she cannot remove. One of the greatest lawsuits still against Twitter, pre-Elon Musk, is the fact that many, 62,000 people in this lawsuit are asking for their pornographic images as children to be removed from the internet, and they're not getting it done because of Section 230. Well, there comes Congress. What are you doing? Protecting the innocence of children. So please have the conversation with your child, whether someone has asked them to compromise, self-compromise, send a nude image of themselves. Are they talking to a predator, a pedophile online? Go to our website, help, JBM, Juliet, Bravo, Mike.org or JacoBooyensMinistries.org. Learn about sex trafficking. Learn about help, how to get your boys and girls out of pornography, your husband, your wife, and then reach out to us if you've got positive results in the drug test. Also, please remember Patriot Mobile, America's #1 Christian conservative cell phone provider, stands with us to save and rescue the lives of children. Please check them out. Go to patriotmobile.com, mention Bottom Line. They will buy you out of your existing contract. They literally walk with us to help us save children. And then, if you're drinking coffee, and I know you are, you can only drink Storyville coffee. Why? Every dollar from Storyville, that is profit, they put towards fighting sex trafficking. Storyville and their founders have a heart of God, and they literally help us rescue children, lives. So when you drink coffee, we say you can save a life one cup at a time, and their slogan is love everybody. It is, by the way, the #1 roaster in the United States. Storyville Coffee. Subscribe online. Go to storyvillecoffee.com. Drink coffee. Help us save a life. Don't drink Starbucks. They support Planned Parenthood. They don't support life. Nothing about what they do supports life. Storyville Coffee supports life. And I promise you, you're going to love it more. It is great, incredible coffee. Affordable, delivered straight to your home with a very kind message that thank you for helping us rescue lives from sex trafficking. God bless you. Have a fun week drug testing your children. Never thought I'd say that one at the end of the show, but let's go. You know what? I'm excited because even if they test positive, it means we can help a child in need that's screaming out for help. And may the adults pay attention. God bless you.